Hello, Matt Davis here with more homework quiz help. This one is from section 7.1. According to an October 2011 Rasmussen study, 61% of Americans think that the U.S. should celebrate Columbus Day. Suppose that a random sample of size 659 was taken at that time, and those polled were asked if they thought the U.S. should celebrate Columbus Day. If the sample contained 418 people that said they thought that the U.S. should still celebrate Columbus Day, then what would be the sampling error of our point estimate? Round your answer to 4 decimal places. All right, so the first thing, in the interest of giving help but not answers, we're going to change this 418 to 420. So a small change in the numbers, but not in the process. So they talk about the sampling error of our point estimate. So the first thing we want to do is think about, are we in the context of a proportion or a mean? Well, up here they're talking about 61% of Americans believe a certain thing. So that is a proportion of Americans. So this value right here, since it's of Americans, would be the population proportion. So that would be P, but P needs to be converted to decimal before we do any work with it. So we'd slide that decimal over 2 spots, remove the percentage symbol, and get P equals 0.61. All right, so now that we see the context we're in is proportions, then when they refer to the point estimate, that would have to be the sample proportion. So let's go ahead and compute that. So the sample proportion is P hat. P hat is X over N. X is the number of successes in our sample, and N is the sample size. So we have size of the sample is 659 right here, so that's N. We have 420 people said that they believe the U.S. should still celebrate Columbus Day, so that's our X. So X is equal to 420 divided by the sample size of 659. We do that division, round it to 4 decimal places. If you do that on the calculator, you get 0.6373. Okay, so that's not our answer to this question because what they want us to find is the sampling error, but you need that number to get it. And that, by the way, that sample proportion is probably the answer to the previous question. So how do you get at sampling error? Well, when you're in the proportion context, sampling error is just the absolute value of the difference between your sample proportion and your population proportion. So we just calculated P hat, that's 0.6373. The value of P was given to us when they said 61% of Americans believe. So that was our 0.61. So we do the subtraction, just a simple subtraction on the calculator. We get 0.0273. That's an absolute value, but an absolute value just leaves a positive number alone. So that would just be 0.0273. And that's our answer. That's what we put into active learning. They wanted 4 decimal places, so that's what we're giving them there. So where are the spots that this can go wrong? Well, one of them is that it is vital to make sure that you change your 61% into decimal form. So we need that to be P equals 0.61. If we try to do the subtraction with a minus 61, we're going to get a big error here. So we need to make sure we're always converting those percentages to decimal form. And then the other big thing is not misreading the question. They want to know what would be the sampling error of our point estimate. And when you want sampling error of the point estimate, that is this formula right here. There are other situations that contain the phrase sampling error, like expected sampling error or the probability of getting acceptable sampling error. And if you mix this up with those, you're going to go down the wrong road. So you have to be careful that you don't just hear sampling error and think, oh, I know what that is. There's 3 different kinds of questions we do that have the phrase sampling error. What's the sampling error of our point estimate, which is just the subtraction, expected sampling error, and probability of acceptable sampling error. Those are the 3 situations. So they all have that common phrase sampling error in common, but you need to look at the bigger context to make sure you're heading in the right direction. All right, I hope that helped you out wherever you were stuck. Good luck as you continue on and head back to the quiz.